This is how to dominate on the new breeze. Let's start with some generalized win conditions, what the changes actually mean for gameplay, agent and utility value shifts, and how to learn the map effectively. On an average round for attack, mid is no longer optional. Previously, you could compensate for weak mid control by playing holes. That's gone. Changes like this in mid make defenders' contact aggro pushes really strong due to less angles to worry about. Now if you skip mid entirely, you let defenders take infinite timings and info, which diminishes your options a lot. So what we're going to see a lot more of are light defaults into executes, early round executes, or shallow mid pressure. As soon as you have control, you go into splits. There'll be slightly less long dragged out rounds compared to before. Start round fakes without any mid presence are much riskier now because defenders get very strong drop off areas. On defense, this map heavily rewards timings. You're looking for picks around the map using passive conditioning utility or just dry peak timings. Breeze specifically is one of the maps where reclearing with utility is slightly less rewarding, simply because the first areas of contention are so simple. There isn't a lot of structure for attackers to hide from utility, so there's actually less need for a lot of utility based agents. On top of that, there will be likely an influx of agents with get out of jail free abilities due to the map structure, so another argument for less need of initiator utility on defense. That's also why double duelists work so well here. If you compare this to other maps, the closest comparison is Abyss, but even Abyss has more structure in A main. Here, there's no true hard utility contest zone. It's mostly just space, timings, and execution quality. At a macro level, the biggest change is the lane structure. We went from 4 lane map to a 3 lane map with a much heavier emphasis on mid. Choke density is also lower across the board. A main is simpler, mid is simpler, but double doors is more complex. So what this means is, for attackers, there's less emphasis on heavy utility control and more value in passive or contact utility. For defenders, reclears are actually easier because there's less space for attackers to hide from utility. But the biggest change isn't choke points, it's in the rotations. Deleting the spawn rotate forces attackers to rotate through the upper lane, and with a deepening of that mid corner, defenders now have a viable drop-off position. So if defenders control mid, attackers can't just run rotate anymore. They leak their intentions way more easily than before. Another reason why mid is important is due to the opening door. If you have mid, you can fake B without being heard. You can pressure mid, then instantly regroup for an A main hit via the opening door, or you can fake going back A by activating the door, then head back for B. This massively increases the amount of mind games you can play once you own mid. Defender rotation timings are mostly unchanged, except for A. With holes gone, A retakes are actually faster now. Previously, if you didn't have holes control, that needed to be cleared before retaking. Now, if everyone is in position, defenders can start the retake immediately. Another point is, now you can freely sprint rotate from A to B without risking the holes lurk herring, therefore making the rotation process for retakes a lot faster. There's also a subtle mid geometry change. The more shallow drop-off area is easier to clear from elbow now, which again reinforces how important mid actually is. Splitting B is easier due to fewer exposed angles. Splitting A is slightly harder because there are more 90-degree angles you have to clear. Bomb site wise, these changes mainly increase attackers' post-plant win rate with more playable space and more cover. With regard to defenders, they aren't significantly stronger when it comes to holding sites, but as mentioned above, the decrease in rotation time from defenders is balanced by the stronger post-plant from attackers. So this fosters less of a playing for lineups dependent meta, as average retake time drops for defenders and attackers have more options to play crossfires on site. So what does all of this mean in practice? For attackers, passive utility and or contact plays flow better into straight executes. With holes gone, you don't need to commit resources there anymore, which means more utility for mid and for exes. So we anticipate a drop in traditional senti use, and increase in double duelist and smoke. But because of this, dragging the round out is riskier now. Unless you have full coverage on every lane, defenders can make timing plays much more freely, either with passive utility or dry peaks. As an attacker, spreading yourself too thin might mean not enough trades, but too clumped would mean more susceptible to these dry reclers. For defenders, not a lot changes fundamentally, but one less lane means one less dedicated early round holder, so sentinel utility can be moved elsewhere, or even more important, there's less need for a traditional senti. This opens up more group plays and proactive info pushes, but it's also a double-edged sword because attackers have fewer lanes to worry about your aggression as well. For agent and utility value shifts, Viper is still dominant on this map. This new innovative deep mid wall I've thought of that plays on the mid drop-off idea I've just mentioned is especially important if teams start valuing the idea of deep mid control. It enables smoother A retakes and also creates passive mid pressure where someone can walk into the drop-off area when the wall goes up. The existence of this wall heavily pressures attackers into taking mid, otherwise they risk giving defenders free information. And it makes attackers start round AXCs a lot weaker because defenders can instantly flank through the opening door. It functions very similarly to the Fnatic Haven wall. Other strong agents include Jet, Neon, Yoru, Chamber, Astra, and Vito. Outside of Astra, what you're really looking for are agents that are comfortable taking dry fights and holding timing-based positions, because that's what this map rewards. Neon is one of my personal favorite picks. We can see from early round heat maps, it shows Elbow as a slightly defender-favored dry peak area, and Neon punishes off barrier timings extremely well. You can early sprint into jump spots, which beats defenders' initial timing. This clears a pseudo lane and helps your team deduce where defenders are peeking. On B splits, Neon is especially strong. The architecture makes wrapping backside easier, and with Neon Wall, B becomes very hard to anchor as a defender compared to if attackers are running any other double duelists. On the flip side, agents that have lost value, Cypher Cam loses value with holes gone, and Cypher Trips gain some value since spawn flank no longer exists. Silver loses some value because you're now unable to get deep A main info from holes, but even with a slightly weaker server, other initiators still pales in comparison to server, other than potential experimental picks such as Teho, Sky, or KO for a niche strong XE playstyle. If you're learning this map, here's what I'd focus on to get the edge. On defense, actively look for timings, look for dry or passive util pushes together for info, and play agents with retreat abilities so you can limit test safely. On attack, learn consistent ways to take mid, practice strong XEs, and keep your defaults simple. Defaults and execute works well on most of the time. For example, as soon as you have deep elbow control, can look for B splits, ceteris paribus.